And then the other situation, I have to report that there's a lot of turmoil. It's rough waters there, Carolina Panthers, with what's going on, described as Hunger Games. And David Tepper, the owner, Panthers owner, what's going on? Backstabbing, stuff behind people's back. And Joseph Person. Joe covers the Carolina Panthers for The Athletic. He was part of this expose on the Carolina Panthers. Kind enough to join us. By the way, there's a press conference at the stadium in Carolina, 11:25 Eastern. So Joe is en route to that. Sum up your article about the dysfunction of the Carolina Panthers, Joe.
So, Dan, really at root of this, was on the offensive side of the building. And David Tepper, if you remember, they had Matt Rule. One of the criticisms of Matt Rule was that he had a staff full of kind of his guys he'd worked with on the college side. And so when Tepper hires Frank Reich last January, they made a big deal about diversity of thought and not just kind of hiring people in Frank's circle. And so they did that. David Tepper spent a lot of money. They went out and got Thomas Brown from the Rams to be the offensive coordinator. They got Deuce Staley. They got Josh McCown, who, as you know, had interviewed for the Texans head coaching job previously. Problem is, some of these guys had never worked together and had never worked with Frank. And I think when things started getting bad, when they weren't winning, and when Bryce Young's development was seemingly stagnating a bit, and the offense was bad, then I think there weren't those built-in loyalties, and there were some factions that formed on the offensive side in the offensive staff room, and we saw a little bit of that publicly when Frank Reich took back over, reclaimed the play calling duties from Thomas Brown, the OC. And but come to find out, there was quite a bit behind the scenes going on too.
How involved is David Tepper with actually game plan, play calling? I mean, are we that deep into the system here as the owner?
No, I'm glad you asked that. I mean, he's very hands-on owner. Obviously, he and his wife Nicole went on all the pro day visits or the quarterback pro days when they were clearly going to take either Bryce or CJ or Anthony Richardson. They were there. They're hands-on to that level. But what he's not in there watching film.
Okay.
I think after Scott Fitter, the GM, had talked to Frank Reich about that, they felt, some in the building felt that Bryce was not getting deep enough in his pass sets, and that was the problem, the root of a lot of the protection issues. He just wasn't quite deep enough. So after Fitter had talked to Reich about that, I don't know if they felt it still wasn't getting fixed. But then there was a group that did go talk to Tepper and got him involved at that level. But no, it's not like Tepper's watching film and calling, Frank Reich and others with play tips. But certainly a very involved owner, and some would say too involved in some cases.
What do you think the reaction is going to be with your article when you go into the facility today in this press conference coming up in about 20 minutes?
Yeah, so I was out here yesterday, and I'm sure that people didn't love it, but I've also had, heard from other people that's like, oh yeah, that's accurate. This is, and I think, in fairness, Dan, I think a lot of this goes on in a lot of NFL buildings when you're 1-10 or you're 1-11. Now it was 1-10 when Frank got fired. I think just what accentuated this case is, as I mentioned, there were guys who'd worked together here, but then another group that had not. And I just don't think there were those loyalties, those built-in loyalties and the trust. And so when things got bad, as I mentioned, guys were looking out for themselves and their next job and their reputation.
Yeah.
And And Tepper clearly was getting agitated. Not even really by that. He was ticked because the mortgaging of the future that they made to trade up with Chicago for number one, and he was watching Bryce Young go out there every week and get sacked and get hit, and they were putting up like 10 points and losing, game after game, including some to some not real good teams.
Do you get a specified seat? Are you up front? Do you want to sit up front today, Joe?
You know what? This is like, first of all, this was a previously, we should mention that this was not like a hastily called press conference where this is the offense coordinator, Thomas Brown. We meet with him every Thursday at this time. No, listen, when I put my name on a story and that was a co-byline with Diana Rossini, and I know she feels the same way, I'm going to show up. I'm going to be there, and if anyone's got an issue, we'll talk about it. I mean, I'm not saying I'm like being confrontational, but I'm going to make myself available. If people have issues, let's hear them.
I love it. All right, play nice today, there, Joseph, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Dan.
All right, that's Joe Person. He covers Carolina Panthers for The Athletic.